You! Yeah, you in the fancy suit. Pull it over. Now! The voice, amplified by a police cruiser's loudhailer, was a raw, aggressive bark that shattered the otherwise calm afternoon traffic. Behind the wheel of a late-model Lincoln Continental, Senator Harrison Cole, a man whose measured tones usually resonated in the hallowed halls of the United States Senate, felt a familiar, weary sigh escape his lips. He was on his way to a town hall meeting in a district not far from his state capital, a routine drive he often made himself, without fanfare or security detail, to stay connected to the people he served. He signaled calmly and pulled his vehicle to the side of the busy thoroughfare. Before he could even roll down his window, a young white police officer, a man whose name tag read Miller and whose entire demeanor screamed power trip, was at his door, his hand already resting aggressively on his holstered sidearm. Officer Miller didn't ask for license and registration. Oh no, he went straight for the jugular. "All right, smart guy," Miller sneered, his face unpleasantly close to the window, his eyes hidden behind reflective sunglasses that only amplified his menace. "What's someone like you doing driving a car like this in my city? You look like you're up to no good. Probably stolen, right? Get out of the car, now! Hands where I can see 'em. You look like a damn criminal." Senator Harrison Cole, a man who had faced down hostile foreign dignitaries and navigated treacherous political minefields with unshakable composure, regarded Officer Miller with an expression of cold, quiet contemplation. The sheer, unadulterated racism, the immediate presumption of guilt, the blatant abuse of authority, it was everything he had fought against his entire career. "Officer," Senator Cole said, his voice low, precise and carrying an almost imperceptible tremor of restrained fury, "I assure you, this vehicle is not stolen, and your assessment of my character is grievously mistaken." Miller let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Oh, is it now? Grievously mistaken? Listen to a Rhodes Scholar here. You think your fancy words are going to get you out of this, pal? I know your type. All mouth, until you're staring down the barrel of a long prison sentence." He yanked on the senator's car door handle. "I said, get out, or do I have to drag you out? You resisting piece of trash." This was beyond outrageous. This was a calculated degradation. Senator Cole, knowing that any physical resistance would only escalate the situation and play into this officer's prejudiced narrative, slowly opened his door and stepped out, his hands held carefully away from his body. He was dressed impeccably, as always, in a tailored dark suit, a man who exuded quiet authority and intellect. To Officer Miller, however, he was just another black man to be bullied, to be broken. "That's better," Miller sneered, shoving the senator roughly against the side of the Lincoln. "Now, let's see what kind of contraband you're hiding in this stolen whip." He began a pat-down that was intentionally rough, demeaning, lingering far too long, far too invasively. "Where'd you get the money for a ride like this, huh? Deal a little something on the side? Or maybe you just carjacked some rich white dude?" His voice was a low, taunting litany of racist tropes. Can you even imagine the humiliation? The sheer, unadulterated rage that must have been building in Senator Cole? But on the outside, he remained a pillar of icy calm. "Officer," Senator Cole stated, his voice still level, though the ice in it was now sub-zero, "your conduct is a disgrace to your badge and a flagrant violation of my civil rights. You have no probable cause for this stop, no justification for this assault, and your language is frankly beneath contempt. You will regret this entire interaction, profoundly." Miller actually laughed out loud at that, a braying, ugly sound. "Oh, I'm gonna regret it, am I? Is that a threat, tough guy? You threatening a police officer? That's a felony, you know. Now I really got you." He seemed almost gleeful. He grabbed Senator Cole's arm, twisting it behind his back with a grunt of exertion. "You're under arrest for threatening an officer, resisting arrest, and suspicious loitering in a high-crime area." He was making it up as he went along, wasn't he, folks? Just pulling charges out of his prejudiced backside. The senator didn't struggle physically, but the insult, the sheer, unadulterated injustice of it all, was a palpable force. "You are making a catastrophic mistake, Officer Miller," Senator Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The only mistake here, pal," Miller snarled, shoving the senator towards his patrol car, "was you thinking you could get away with your criminal behavior in my city? You think that fancy suit and that smooth talk makes you special? Let me tell you something. In my book, you're just another, well, you know what you are." He opened the back door of the cruiser. "Get in before I decide to bounce your head off the pavement to make sure you understand who's in charge here." And with a final, contemptuous shove, Officer Miller forced United States Senator Harrison Cole into the cramped, dirty back seat of his police cruiser. He slammed the door shut, a look of smug, idiotic triumph on his face. He probably thought he was a hero, a tough cop cleaning up the streets. He had no idea he had just unlawfully detained, assaulted, and racially abused one of the most powerful and respected lawmakers in the entire nation. A man who had the governor, the attorney general, the director of the FBI, and indeed the president of the United States on his personal contact list. As Officer Miller swaggered back to the driver's seat, perhaps already mentally composing the glowing, self-congratulatory report he would file about this excellent collar, Senator Cole sat in the darkness of the cruiser. His suit was disheveled. His dignity, though unbowed, had been grievously assaulted. The racist taunts, the physical abuse, the sheer mindless arrogance of the officer. It was a microcosm of the very injustices he had dedicated his life to fighting. He felt a cold, righteous fury, a fury he hadn't felt since his early days as a civil rights lawyer, long before he'd entered the political arena. He looked at the back of Officer Miller's head. Miller was whistling now, a jaunty, carefree tune, utterly oblivious to the career-ending, life-altering storm he had just unleashed upon himself. He thought he had silenced another uppity black man. He thought he had won. Senator Cole calmly reached into his inner jacket pocket. He retrieved his secure, encrypted satellite phone, a device far removed from any standard civilian model. Officer Miller wouldn't even recognize it for what it was. The senator scrolled through his contacts, his expression now unreadable, a mask of cold, implacable resolve. He found the number he wanted. He pressed call. The phone on the other end would ring in the private office of Governor Evelyn Hayes, a woman he had mentored, a woman who owed him more than a few political favors, a woman known for her swift, decisive action against any form of corruption or injustice within her state. Officer Miller was still whistling, probably dreaming of commendations. He had no idea that the man in his back seat was about to make a phone call that would not just end his shift, but his entire career, in a blaze of public humiliation and federal investigation. "Oh, Officer Miller, you silly, silly man. You thought you were a lion, taming a supposed beast. You were about to find out you were just a yapping poodle who had bitten the shepherd. And the shepherd? He was calling in the entire flock, and the wolves. The reckoning was coming, and it was going to be biblical." The secure satellite phone in Senator Harrison Cole's hand disconnected with a barely audible click. The call to Governor Evelyn Hayes complete. He slipped the device back into his inner jacket pocket just as Officer Miller climbed back into the driver's seat of the patrol car, still whistling his jaunty, oblivious tune. Miller adjusted his rearview mirror, not to check traffic, but to sneer at his prisoner. "Well, well, Mr. Fancy Suit," Miller taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. "Not looking so high and mighty now, are ya? Bet you're already thinking about that first delightful meal in county lockup. Heard the mystery meat on Tuesdays is a real killer." He chuckled at his own wit. "Should have kept that big mouth of yours shut. Could have just given you a ticket for, oh, I don't know, existing while black in a nice car? But no, you had to go and threaten a police officer. Now you get the full treatment, pal. The works." He started the car, pulling away from the curb with a lurch that threw Senator Cole against the hard plastic seat. As they drove, Miller continued his monologue of abuse, a stream of racist invective, taunts about the senator's intelligence, his imagined criminality, the joys of prison life that awaited him. He was clearly enjoying himself, performing for an audience of one, secure in his petty power. He even got on the radio, his voice taking on a self-important, official tone. "Dispatch, this is Unit 72, Officer Miller. En route to central booking with one male, black apprehended following a traffic stop. Subject was non-compliant, verbally abusive, and made credible threats against this officer. Charges will include resisting arrest, threatening a law enforcement officer, and disorderly conduct. Yeah, a real winner. Over. He winked at his own reflection in the mirror. What a hero. Senator Cole, meanwhile, remained a study in glacial composure. He listened. He observed. He cataloged every word, every nuance of Miller's hate-filled tirade, every lie Miller fed into the official police radio. His mind, honed by decades of high-stakes negotiation and legislative battle, was already dissecting the situation, anticipating the next moves, not just for his own extrication, but for the systemic rot officer Miller so clearly represented. The satellite phone in his pocket, though now silent, had unleashed a tempest that was, at this very moment, beginning to gather hurricane force at the highest levels of state government. Governor Evelyn Hayes in her State House office had slammed down her own secure line with a controlled fury that made her chief of staff flinch. "Get me Superintendent Davies of the State Police now," she had barked, "and then get me the Attorney General, and clear my schedule for the rest of the day. We have a Code Omega situation." A Code Omega, in her private lexicon, meant a catastrophic failure of public trust involving a high-level official requiring immediate, decisive, and overwhelming intervention. United States Senator Harrison Cole, her mentor, her friend, a man of unimpeachable integrity, had been assaulted and falsely arrested by one of her state's own police officers. Heads, she vowed, would not just roll, they would be launched into orbit. Superintendent Davies, a man who prided himself on running a tight ship, nearly dropped his coffee when he heard the governor's icy, furious voice detailing the incident involving Senator Cole and a cowboy named Miller. The superintendent immediately activated the state police internal affairs rapid response protocol, his mind racing through the potential political and legal fallout. He ordered an immediate trace on Officer Miller's unit, a discreet shadow to be placed on him, and for Miller's direct commanding officer at the local precinct to be contacted with extreme prejudice, but with initial instructions to ascertain the situation without tipping Miller off. Unaware of the whirlwind he had unleashed, Officer Miller pulled into the sally port of the grimy, overcrowded downtown precinct, a triumphant smirk on his face. He hauled Senator Cole out of the car, shoving him roughly towards the booking desk. "Got another one for the collection, Sarge," Miller announced to the bored, overweight desk sergeant, a man named Brody whose face looked like a roadmap of bad life choices. "This one's a real prize, thinks he's Mr. Big Shot. Gave me a whole lot of lip." Sergeant Brody eyed Senator Cole's tailored suit, now rumpled and stained, with a mixture of disdain and amusement. "Oh yeah? Another one who thinks the rules don't apply to him, huh, Miller? Good collar. What's he in for? Resisting, threatening an officer, disorderly, the usual for his type when they get caught doing wrong," Miller said with a wink. "All right, Mr. Big Shot," Brody sneered at Senator Cole. "Let's get your particulars. Name?" "Harrison Cole," the senator replied, his voice calm. "And I demand my right to one phone call. I need to contact my legal counsel, and I will also be contacting the office of Governor Evelyn Hayes." Brody and Miller exchanged a look, then burst into laughter. "The governor?" Brody chortled. "Hear that, Miller? This one knows the governor." "Yeah, right, pal. And I'm best friends with the Pope. Get in line. You'll get your call when we're good and ready. Now empty your pockets, and let's get those pretty fingerprints of yours." The booking process was a calculated exercise in humiliation. Senator Cole was treated like a common criminal, his polite requests ignored, his dignity systematically stripped away. He was fingerprinted, his hands roughly manipulated. His mugshot was taken, the harsh flash illuminating his bruised cheek where Miller had shoved him against the car. He was then led to a filthy, overcrowded holding cell, the stench of unwashed bodies, stale urine, and despair assaulting his nostrils. The heavy steel door clanged shut behind him, a sound that, for so many, signified the end of hope. For Senator Cole, it was merely an interlude. He sat on a hard, cold bench, surrounded by the dregs of the city's underbelly. He closed his eyes not in despair, but in deep, focused thought. He replayed every moment of the encounter with Miller, every word, every action. He was building his case. This wasn't just about his own mistreatment anymore. This was about Officer Miller, about Sergeant Brody, about a system that allowed such prejudice and abuse to fester. Meanwhile, the storm Senator Cole had unleashed was rapidly gathering force. The local police chief, a man named Henderson, had received a series of increasingly frantic and furious calls from the state police superintendent's office, then directly from the state attorney general, and finally a chillingly brief, unyieldingly direct call from Governor Hayes herself. Chief Henderson, who had been planning a quiet evening, was now in a state of pure, unadulterated panic. A U.S. senator arrested by one of his officers? On what charges? He bellowed for Miller's incident report, for Miller himself, for Sergeant Brody. Suddenly, the atmosphere around Senator Cole's holding cell began to change. A flustered-looking precinct captain, a man named Davies whom Cole had not yet encountered, appeared at the bars, his face pale, his eyes wide with an almost comical terror. Mr. Mr. Cole, sir? Captain Davies stammered, his voice several octaves higher than usual. There appears to have been a most regrettable misunderstanding regarding your detention. A clerical error, perhaps. If you would be so kind as to step this way, sir? We need to clarify a few details immediately. Other inmates in the holding cell stared, dumbfounded, as this Mr. Bigshot, who they'd assumed was just another unlucky soul, was suddenly being treated with a level of deference usually reserved for visiting judges. Senator Cole rose slowly, his expression unreadable. He was escorted not to an interrogation room, but to Captain Davies' surprisingly neat office. He was offered a comfortable chair, a bottle of water, even a cup of coffee, all of which he politely declined. Chief Henderson himself was there, wringing his hands, his face ashen. Officer Miller and Sergeant Brody were also present, standing rigidly in a corner, no longer sneering, but looking like condemned men awaiting the hangman's noose. They still didn't know who Cole was, but they knew with a certainty that chilled them to the bone that they had made a mistake of cataclysmic proportions. Just as Captain Davies was launching into a rambling, incoherent apology, the doors to his office burst open. Two stern-faced, impeccably dressed men in dark suits strode in, followed by a woman in the uniform of a state police major. "Chief Henderson, Captain Davies," one of the men in suits said, his voice all business. "I'm Special Agent Pike, State Bureau of Investigation. This is Major Rollins, State Police Internal Affairs. We're here regarding the unlawful arrest and assault of a United States Senator by one of your officers, a Chad Miller." He then looked directly at Miller, whose knees visibly buckled. "Officer Miller, you are being placed on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending a full state and federal investigation into your conduct today. You will surrender your badge and service weapon." Officer Miller stared, his face a mask of utter, uncomprehending terror. "Senator?" he croaked, his voice barely a whisper, finally looking at Harrison Cole, truly seeing him for the first time. "United States? Senator?" Major Rollins stepped forward, her eyes like ice. "Officer Miller," she said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "We've received a direct report from the governor's office, and let me assure you, she is displeased. It seems the man you so bravely arrested for threatening an officer and disorderly conduct, the man you referred to with such colorful language, is none other than United States Senator Harrison Cole. Perhaps, Officer Miller," she continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "you'd care to amend your initial report? Or perhaps you'd like to explain to us, and to the governor, and very soon to a federal grand jury, just what probable cause you had to assault a sitting U.S. Senator and subject him to racist abuse? Take your time. We have all day, and a very, very good recording of your earlier performance." Officer Miller looked like he was about to faint. Sergeant Brody simply closed his eyes, a low groan escaping his lips. The carefully constructed world of their petty corruption and prejudice had just been nuked from orbit, and Senator Harrison Cole, watching them, felt not triumph, not yet, but the cold, grim satisfaction of a man who knew that justice, however delayed, however hard fought, was finally inexorably on its way. The real battle was just beginning. The interrogation room at the precinct suddenly felt 10 degrees colder to Officer Chad Miller. The smug, belligerent cop who had swaggered through his shift just an hour earlier was gone, replaced by a pale, sweating, trembling wreck. United States Senator Harrison Cole. The words echoed in his skull like a death knell. He had assaulted, falsely arrested, and racially abused a sitting United States senator. The sheer, mind-boggling stupidity of his actions, the catastrophic misjudgment, crashed down on him with the force of an avalanche. Major Rollins of the State Police Internal Affairs, her voice devoid of any sympathy, began the formal questioning, with Special Agent Pike from the State Bureau of Investigation observing, his expression equally grim. "Officer Miller," Major Rollins began, "we have received a direct communication from the office of Governor Evelyn Hayes concerning your interaction with Senator Harrison Cole. The governor, to put it mildly, is demanding answers. And so are we. Let's start with your purported probable cause for the initial traffic stop." Miller stammered, his eyes darting wildly. I thought he looked suspicious, ma'am. Driving that fancy car, he matched a vague description of a suspect in a recent, robbery in the area. It was a pathetic, transparent lie, and everyone in the room knew it. "A vague description?" Agent Pike interjected, his voice like silk-wrapped steel. "Funny, Officer Miller, because Senator Cole's vehicle was not reported stolen, nor does he, a distinguished public servant with decades of unimpeachable history, match the description of any known robbery suspect in this state or any other. In fact, the only crime Senator Cole appears to have committed today was driving while black in a nice car and then daring to calmly question your unprofessional conduct." Major Rollins leaned forward. "Officer Miller, we have also been made aware that Senator Cole was physically assaulted during this arrest and subjected to a barrage of racial slurs and demeaning language. Would you care to comment on that? Or perhaps you'd like us to review the footage from your body-worn camera, which I trust was active during the entire encounter." At the mention of his body cam, Miller's remaining bravado utterly collapsed. He knew what was on that footage. He knew he hadn't bothered to be subtle with his taunts. So confident was he in his victim's powerlessness. He began to babble, a torrent of desperate excuses, denials, and pathetic attempts to shift blame. "It was a misunderstanding. He was being disrespectful. I felt threatened. Sarge Brody, he's always telling us to be tough on these types. Maybe it's the training or the pressure. I didn't mean..." Narrator: "Oh, look at Officer Tough Guy now. Not so brave when he's not hiding behind a badge and a gun, is he? Suddenly he's all misunderstanding and terrible mistake. Funny how that works when you realize you've just assaulted a man who can make your entire world disappear with a single phone call." Meanwhile, Senator Harrison Cole, having been discreetly escorted from the precinct by a now deeply apologetic Chief Henderson and Captain Davies, both of whom looked like they were about to tender their resignations, was already on a secure line with Governor Hayes. A fresh suit had been delivered to him by a hastily dispatched aide. The governor was, as expected, incandescent with rage, but also coldly efficient. "Harrison, I am beyond appalled," Governor Hayes said, her voice tight with fury. "This Miller, he's finished. I've already spoken to Superintendent Davies and the AG Miller is suspended without pay. Effective immediately. Pending termination and a full criminal investigation by the State Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, which I have personally requested. Brody, Henderson, Davies. Their careers are all under a very bright, very hot microscope. This entire precinct is going to be overhauled from top to bottom. We will make an example of this, Harrison. This rot stops now." And make an example they did. The news carefully managed at first to allow the initial investigation to proceed, soon broke with the force of a hurricane. U.S. Senator assaulted, falsely arrested by local cop in shocking racial profiling incident, screamed the headlines. Officer Chad Miller's name and his now infamous smug booking photo were plastered across every news channel, every website, every social media platform. He became the national poster boy for racist policing, his actions condemned from local city councils to the floor of the U.S. Senate itself. The public humiliation for Miller was just beginning. As part of a plea agreement to avoid even more draconian federal charges that would have seen him imprisoned for decades, Miller, after being summarily fired from the police force in disgrace, was compelled to issue a formal public apology. Not just a written statement, oh no. He had to deliver it live on national television during a primetime news interview. Narrator: can you imagine the ratings? America tunes in to watch racist cop eats crow, live. Popcorn sales went through the roof that night, folks. There he was, Chad Miller, former tough guy cop, now a broken, sniveling wreck in a cheap suit, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice trembling as he read a carefully worded, lawyer-approved apology to Senator Harrison Cole and to the nation. I deeply regret my unprofessional and offensive actions, he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead under the hot studio lights. My conduct was inexcusable, a profound failure of judgment, and did not reflect the values of law enforcement. It was a pathetic, unconvincing performance, but his utter humiliation was palpable and for millions watching, deeply, deeply satisfying. Narrator: don't strain yourself with sincerity there, Chad. We can all see the "I'm so very sorry I got caught and my life is ruined" shining through. Bravo, a truly Oscar-worthy performance of feigned remorse. The consequences didn't end with Miller. Sergeant Brody was demoted to beat cop in the city's most remote and undesirable sanitation depot. Figuratively speaking, of course, though one can dream. Chief Henderson and Captain Davies tendered their early retirements with remarkable alacrity, their careers ending under a cloud of disgrace. The entire precinct underwent a federally mandated overhaul, with new leadership, intensive anti-bias training, and a community oversight board. Governor Hayes, true to her word, launched a statewide task force on policing reform, with Senator Cole quietly advising from Washington. New legislation was drafted, new protocols implemented, all aimed at eradicating the kind of systemic prejudice and abuse of power that Officer Miller had so grotesquely embodied. Senator Harrison Cole returned to his duties in Washington, D.C., his resolve to fight for justice and equality now forged with an even harder, more personal edge. A few weeks later, he stood on the floor of the United States Senate, not to speak of his personal ordeal as a victim, but as a lawmaker, a leader. He delivered a powerful, impassioned speech on the urgent need for national police reform, for accountability, for an end to racial profiling, drawing not on statistics, but on the visceral, undeniable truth of lived experience, though he never explicitly detailed his own recent encounter. Those who knew, knew. His words resonated across the nation, adding powerful momentum to the ongoing movement for change. The final image we might see of Officer Chad Miller, perhaps years later, is of him working a dead-end minimum wage job, maybe as a night security guard at a deserted strip mall, his face bitter, forgotten. A stark contrast to Senator Harrison Cole, seen on a news report, confidently striding through the halls of the Capitol, a respected leader championing a new civil rights bill, his quiet power, his true authority never more evident. And so, folks, Officer Chad Miller learned a very hard, very public lesson. Never judge a man by the color of his skin or the car he drives. True power doesn't need to shout, it acts. And justice, though sometimes it takes a detour through a dirty holding cell and a national scandal, will always eventually triumph over bigotry and hate. As for Officer Miller, well, let's just say his 15 minutes of infamy probably felt like a life sentence. And you know what? For once, the punishment truly did fit the crime.